Hey, Nick here. Listen, I want to talk about hoses. I'm going to do a video about the transmission modulator. So I was going to start over there, the booster, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to make a video about all the hoses in here. A lot of you people don't know what's the right hose for what. So I got all that down. So what I'll do is I'll show you placement. Now, I know this to be the case, the placement of these things. Some people do it differently. This is the right way to route your hoses. What you see on this car, 61 to 4, it's going to be a little bit different because they have a different power steering pump. They have the Eaton pump. So the power steering hose doesn't go over the valve cover like that. Instead, they go up. Whoops, let me zoom out. They come up around here and go there to the wiper motor. Especially if you have a remote reservoir, then you've got extra hoses and stuff like that. But basically the brake booster hose, radiator hoses, radiator return, the radiator overflow hose, transmission cooler hoses, those will be the same. So coming over here, this is a 66 Thunderbird. So here you can see the brake booster, and there's the brake booster hose. The brake booster hose is this hose here, and it's power brake booster vacuum hose. It's not fuel line. You're not supposed to use fuel line for vacuum hoses, and the reason why is because fuel line, the sidewalls of the hose for fuel line is not strong enough to resist the vacuum. And also the rubber is not the same. And fumes from the engine, oil fumes, gas fumes, will attack fuel line where it doesn't attack vacuum hose. This is a 11/32 brake booster vacuum hose. Here's a 27043, 7/32 vacuum hose that goes to the transmission modulator. Now that goes down to the modulator tube down there. I don't know if you can see that. Let's get a light down there. That goes to the modulator line. There, you can just see it. You can just see it right there. There's a steel line coming from the transmission modulator up to this area, and then that connects to this. Okay, so the modulator gets its vacuum from the booster. Doesn't have to be that way. It can come off of that fitting as well. But this is what the factory did over here, okay? The power steering return pressure hose, the power steering pressure hose is there. That metal fitting comes along the valve cover. Now I put these extra brackets on. That's mine. It's not factory. I have it going around the valve cover and then down to the power steering gearbox. Okay, so you can see that hose. I can't get my hand in there. It's this one here. That's the one that goes up around the valve cover. Now, it's more often than not, I see these hoses coming up along here. I even got into a fight with a guy at the car show. Of course, he bought his new and it came from the factory that way. Okay, whatever you say. Anyway, the way that you see it here is the way that it goes. And then that hose connects to a steel line that then goes down here and bolts to the back of the power steering pump. And you can see that fitting down there. So, that's how that's supposed to be routed. And then this is the power steering return line. which is transmission cooler return line, 3/8 Gates, 3/8 transmission cooler line hose, which goes from the power steering to the wiper motor. Okay. And then the radiator has an overflow hose right there. The overflow hose is 3/8 ID, 1/4 OD. It's a special hose. I'll show you the part numbers. I don't have that in front of me. And I have it going down through the water pump, between the water pump and the timing cover down below. That's a very thin-walled hose, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's very thin-walled. And I just slid it on there. It slid on pretty tight. Sometimes they don't. I've had to use hose clamps on them before, but this one seems to be okay, so I'm not worried about it. Hey, I forgot to put on the vacuum advance tube. What a dope. Okay, well, I'm glad I did this. I forgot all about that. Okay, heater hoses, Gates, 5/8 and 3/4 heater hoses. This is how they're routed. There's a bracket there. You can see that bracket right here. It's shaped like a P, bolts to the inner fender well. Now, the heater valve, originally they bolt to the fender well, inner fender well, but this one didn't have the threads for the bracket, so it's just hovering there in the hose. But I've got it tie wrapped. This hose, you can buy brand new molded, the PCV hose. You can buy that pre-molded from the T-Bird dealers. There's another view of the brake booster line coming off, attached to the firewall, and then going to the brake booster. So it doesn't hit the throttle linkage. See, it's not conflicting with the throttle linkage, right? Nothing's conflicting with the throttle linkage. And then the transmission cooler lines, they're underneath. Okay, transmission modulator, cooler lines. Jeez. Transmission cooler lines, here's the back one. Now I buy steel lines, I don't buy stainless steel. If you buy stainless steel, you're gonna be sorry. There's the front one, because you can't bend them. Stainless steel is so hard. Okay, they go here, they come from up there, like you saw. They come down here, go across. This is on all 61 to 66. They all come here like that. They go to this bracket here. Then they go up. They go along the side of the engine. They go to this bracket here, which is bolted in the correct place. And it's facing in the correct direction. This is the oil, that's the oil filter adapter. It's on the bottom rear bolt, okay? That holds this. Now, as you can see a lot of tie wraps, okay? These lines, they don't want to fit right. I always have a hard time getting them to stay in the brackets. They're very hard to bend. These are regular steel, but still. So what I did is I safety wired them into the bracket so they don't come out. And then I tie wrapped them to keep them together. Now these are original brackets to help keep them together. There's another one right there. And I safety wired it here as well because it won't stay in there, but now it will. So it comes around the fuel pump filter, and then you have the transmission cooler hoses. I double clamp them, 3/8 Gates, 3/8 transmission cooler hose, okay? Now this car has I put a oil cooler on it. You can see it right there. I didn't want them to have any problem. Well, that was part of the reason. I guess the biggest reason is that Matt told me when he did the radiator, he said that the transmission oil cooler was history anyway. So we had to put an external cooler on it. But I'm glad anyhow because it's extra cooling for the trans. So that's it. So, okay, that's how that goes. Okay, so let's talk about the hose sizes and the part numbers. So, starting with the heater hose. Almost all of the Thunderbirds, 58 to 66, use 5/8 and 3/4 heater hose. 50-foot roll of 3/4 inch heater hose is part number 28412. And also you'll notice that all of these hoses, almost all of them, sorry, there's a couple exceptions, are Gates. I try to only buy Gates hose. In some cases, I could only get something else. So the 3/4 heater hose, 28412. Now that's the part number for a 50-foot roll. But if you give them that part number, they'll know what you want in case you only want a foot or two or 8 feet or whatever. You don't have to buy a 50-foot roll. The 5/8, part number 28411. Again, that's the 50-foot roll part number. So just give them that and they'll know what you want. Transmission cooler line, part number 27059 is a 25-foot roll part number. Again, give them that number, they'll know what you want. This is transmission cooler line, which I use for the transmission cooler lines under the car, and also the power steering return. For example, 63 to 66 from the pump to the wiper motor. That would be this return line. 61 and 2 would be from the pump to the gearbox. It's a steel line coming from the gearbox, and then halfway it turns into this, to the pump, to the reservoir on the pump, yeah. So that's a transmission cooler line. This is power brake hose. Now this is the hose that you need to use on your power brake, from the booster to the fitting on the intake manifold. And the part number is 27230, 11/32 hose. And you see how thick-walled it is? That's so it doesn't collapse under vacuum. And this is one of the reasons why you should use this instead of fuel line. Fuel line is not meant to resist suction. It's meant to resist pressure and fuel. So that it's built differently, fuel line. And also, oil fumes attack fuel line. Anyway, this is the right hose for the brake booster. There's the part number and everything. Very thick-walled hose. Now this is the radiator overflow hose. I don't know where the end is. Now you can see how this is very thin-walled. This is, the radiator overflow hose is 3/8 inside diameter and 1/4 outside diameter. And the part number is 34-201. Now I don't know who makes this. I don't know who I got this from because the label is gone. But I did write the part number on it. So, you know what to look for. Now this goes on your surge tank, that little tube coming off where the cap goes. This slides onto that and then goes down underneath the car. So if you have any overflow pressure, it'll blow it out underneath and not all over your engine. Okay. PCV hose. Now I use this, again, it's thick-walled. This is 15/32. I think I use this on the PCV valves, 61s and 2s and 3s and 4s. Anywhere you would need PCV hose. This hose going from the air cleaner to the oil cap. Now this is fuel line, and the reason why, you're thinking, well, you're talking about using PCV hose and not fuel line. I use fuel line here because, first of all, finding PCV hose that big is hard. But this hose doesn't carry any pressure or vacuum. All it does is direct vapor fumes from the oil cap to the air cleaner. It's got no pressure in it, no vacuum is applied to it. So there's nothing's gonna go wrong with it. So you can use the 5/8 fuel line, part number 27008. Okay, that's what I use. Sometimes you need to have hose clamps. This is pretty tight here, so I didn't use hose clamps. And again, it's not that critical. Okay, these two hoses are power steering return hoses. These are for 61 to 64s, cars with air that have a remote reservoir, power steering reservoir. Remote reservoir means the reservoir is separate from the power steering pump and it's located on the inner fender well. So this is the hose that goes between the remote reservoir and the pump. Now these 61 and 2 use the 1/2 inch hose, and 63 and 4 use the 3/4 inch hose. And this is what they look like. These are a power steering return hose. Part number, the 1/2 inch is part number 34997, and the 3/4 is part number 34999. Okay? Now, I don't know if, it's been a long time since I bought this. I'm sure you can buy this by the foot. And you don't need more than a foot. But it's expensive. Geez, this is 20 years old. This price. So I'm sure they're 3 times that now. So, okay, last but not least, fuel line. 3/8 fuel line, 27004. That's the part number for a 25-foot roll. 3/8 fuel line. Pretty, everybody knows what that is. I buy it, obviously, I use a lot of it, so I buy it by the roll. Obviously, I buy everything by the roll because I use a lot of it. So there you have it. There's all the hoses you're gonna need. The hoses I didn't talk about, are the radiator hoses and stuff like that. The crossover hose from the water pump to the intake manifold is 5/8, this hose. And then the cars, most of these Thunderbirds today have a vacuum line going from the carburetor to the vacuum advance. And that's usually a 27042, which would be 27042 would be 5/32, yeah. Usually they're this one, if I'm not mistaken. So that's it, okay? Thank you.